What's up guys, my name is Jedith, and today I have our very first look at the second Demon Hunter hero talent tree called Fel-Scarred. This wasn't in the first build, so we didn't get any opportunity to look at what this might entail, but today a new build dropped and we have the entire talent tree to look at. So it's pretty much exactly what we expected it to be. Eldrazi Reaver was a bit more movement based, more high skill ceiling, a bit more active play style, whereas Fel-Scarred is a bit more passive, and not passive in a bad way, passive in a good way, because that's what this role of hero talents in the War Within is supposed to be. It's not supposed to drastically change your gameplay. It's supposed to add a little flavor and just enhance abilities that you already have. And in my opinion, that's exactly what this is doing. We'll talk about a lot of the findings that I've come across in my testing over the past, 12 hours or so. I have a lot of notes. I've taken a lot of notes. I'll post those in the description of this video. I'll also be making a forum post, kind of just dumping all of this information there and giving my general thoughts. So anyways, before I talk your ear off, let's just start looking at these talents. So the very first one is Demonsurge. Metamorphosis now also increases current and maximum health by 5% and armor by 20%. While Demon Form is active, the first cast of each empowered ability induces a Demon Surge, causing you to explode with Fel energy, dealing 13,531 fire damage to nearby enemies. First thing we need to note here is when it says empowered abilities, that is your Annihilation and your Death Sweep. Those are empowered whenever you go into your demon form. Chaos Strike becomes Annihilation, Blade Dance becomes Death Sweep. So that's what empowered abilities are. There is no extra visual on this yet, but it's safe to assume there will be some type of visual. It only makes sense. It's like the main sort of mechanic of this entire tree. I would expect something, likely some type of Fel explosion, but as of right now, there is nothing. Now, the other thing to note is that it does fire damage. And as you may know, how Demon Hunter and Havoc works is that we have this talent called Any Means Necessary, which converts any type of damage that is either arcane, fire, frost, nature, and shadow damage to be dealt as chaos damage instead, so it's affected by your mastery. The damage from this, the fire damage, will get converted into chaos damage, meaning that it's going to do a lot more damage than 13,000. So this isn't working in the game right now. It's not being converted, but I do have confirmation from the developers that it is intended to work with AMN. In further builds, it will actually start getting converted. Okay, and we drop down here onto the next node, Focused Hatred. Demonsurge deals 35% increased damage when it strikes a single target. So what this is doing is it's giving this tree the capability to also work very well in single target. So in raid, on Mythic Plus bosses, this is just giving it that little extra edge. So it's not just a pure AoE slam fest. This can actually function in single target as well. It kind of fills the same role that First Blood does, right? Because the talent First Blood makes Blade Dance do extra damage in single target. So this is great to see. This means that we are going to have some diversity and variety in where we can use this talent tree. Now this one, Pursuit of Angriness. This is the Demon Hunter Discord motto, the Fellhammer way of living, the Pursuit of Angriness. Movement speed increased by 1% per 10 Fury. So this is going to give you 1% of movement speed for every 10 Fury that you actively have. So if you're sitting at, 20 Fury, you're going to get 2% extra movement speed. Now, this becomes exceptionally good due to one of the later talents that we'll look at. But as of right now, this talent is just not working. As far as I can tell, it doesn't seem to be providing that extra movement speed, but obviously it will. It's just not hooked up at the moment. The next one, Wave of Debilitation. So Chaos Nova slows enemies by 60% and reduces attack and cast speed by 15% for 5 seconds after its stun fades. So this one's pretty straightforward. You stun an enemy or a group of enemies. When the stun fades off, they get another debuff on them that is just reducing their attack speed and cast speed. So this is pretty good. I would be careful about this in Mythic Plus though, because there are a bunch of other classes that provide that type of debuff. Rogues, Warlocks, DKs, they all do, reduced attack speed or cast speed. And you don't just want to be throwing Chaos Nova on cooldown whenever it's up, because you're going to start, incurring stun DR. I think this is really good in some situations. In my just thinking quickly, I feel like the extra movement speed is probably going to be a safer pick and will just be better overall. But that's just my opinion. We'll have to see. Okay, and this choice node on the right is just a defensive choice. So you have Set Fire to the Pain, which is a play on the Adele song, Set Fire to the Rain. 5% of all non-fire damage taken is instead taken as fire damage over 6 seconds. Fire damage taken reduced by 10%. So this is a weird one because it's only 5% of all non-fire damage is converted into fire damage, and you're taking it over 6 seconds, that damage is reduced by 10%. So it's a very small fraction of the actual damage that is incoming to you. But this could be good, probably really good for Vengeance, I would imagine, because it's going to be converting physical, it's going to be converting all other types of damage into fire, and then that's reduced also. But for Havoc, I don't think this is all that great, because ideally you shouldn't be taking any damage. The other option is improved soul rending. So leech granted by soul rending increased by 2% and an additional 2% while metamorphosis is active. So what this means is you have 12% leech outside of meta and you have 24% leech in meta. And now Burning Blades. Your blades burn with fell energy, causing your Chaos Strike, Throw Glaive, and auto attacks to deal an additional 10% damage as fire over 6 seconds. So this functions very similarly to Soulrend, Fel-Scarred it's called now, which is, you know, taking damage from your Throw Glaive and putting it as a dot on the enemies that's just constantly racking up, and it's just rolling and accumulating damage. This works the exact same way, except it's coming from your Chaos Strike, your Throw Glaive, and your auto attacks to deal fire damage, and it's 10% of that damage as fire over 6 seconds, as opposed to Fel-Scarred, which is, you know, 100% of Throw Glaive damage. This is taking 10% from 2 of those abilities in your auto attacks as fire over 6 seconds. And again, like I said earlier with Demonsurge, because this is fire damage, we can assume that that fire damage will be converted to chaos damage through AMN, and that damage will get drastically amplified by our mastery. Now in the middle, we have this talent called Violent Transformation. When you activate Metamorphosis, the cooldown of your Sigil of Flame is immediately reset. So on first glance, this might seem like a kind of strange talent, and it might not make very much sense, but it will. Trust me, it will. Now one thing to note about this talent is that it is also intended to reset the cooldown of Immolation Aura as well as Sigil of Flame. So just something to keep in mind. We do have dev confirmation that that is the intended function of this talent. It's just not doing the Immolation Aura part as of right now. It is intended to reset Sigil of Flame and Immolation Aura. So this works a lot like Chaotic Transformation, where when you activate Metamorphosis, the cooldown of your Blade Dance and I-Beam are immediately reset. This works alongside with that to also reset those other 2 abilities. Okay, and now there's these 2 talents on the right side. So we have Enduring Torment and Monster Rising. So Enduring Torment, the effects of your demon form persist outside of it in a weakened state, increasing Chaos Strike and Blade Dance damage by 5% and haste by 3%. And then we have Monster Rising. Agility increased by 5% while not in demon form. So the purpose of these 2 talents is to essentially smooth out your damage profile, so all of your damage isn't so front-loaded into demon form to the point where, you know, if you ever find yourself outside of demon form, it feels really bad and like you're doing no damage and you're just hitting like a wet noodle. This is supposed to sort of make up for that and bring it, you know, your outside of demon form damage just up a little bit so the gap isn't as large and it doesn't feel as bad. That's what I assume is like the intent of these 2 talents. This one also gives you 3% haste, which is pretty significant because if you're playing a Cycle of Hatred build or a Shattered Destiny, that extra haste is going to allow you to get more GCDs off, meaning you're reducing the cooldown on I-Beam and you're getting back into your demon form even quicker. Now, if we go down to the bottom left, we have Utethered Fury. So maximum fury increased by 50. You might remember the first talent, or one of the first talents we looked at up here, called Pursuit of Angriness. Movement speed increased by 1% per 10 fury. So if we're increasing our maximum fury by 50, that means that our total max fury that we can hold is 170. So if we have a full bar of fury, this talent is going to be giving us an extra 17% movement speed. You can see these 2 talents kind of work together. Somebody did mention that getting, you know, a larger fury bar is going to help play Fel Barrage. In my opinion, I don't think Fel Barrage really needed any help. It wasn't a matter of being able to extend it. It was just the damage got reduced. So, but yeah, it's awesome to get you know, a higher cap on our fury pool, and we're also getting a little bit more movement speed. Okay, now the choice node in the bottom in the middle, we have Student of Suffering. Sigil of Flame can apply Student of Suffering to you, increasing mastery by 14.4% and granting 5 fury every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. So what this does is whenever you use Sigil of Flame, you get a buff. That buff is not applied to you when you place the sigil, it's applied to you when the sigil activates. So I'll show that to you. So I'll have my buffs listed kind of to the right in the middle of my screen. So we're going to place sigil, and as it activates, you can see I have the buff, mastery increased by 8%, generating 5 fury every 2 seconds. So the buff starts when the sigil activates, and then you have 8 seconds of that buff. The good thing about this, and I'm really glad that it works this way, is that this buff lasts for 8 seconds. It's not 4 seconds, it's not 5 seconds, it's 8 seconds. That's a long time. That's generally long enough that you can fit whatever you need to do into it. I'll be going over a general opener at the end of this video, and you'll see how it lines up. So one of the bugs I want to mention about this talent is that you actually still get this buff even if you don't take Student of Suffering. So if I were to talent into this second talent that we're going to look at here in a second. So I no longer have Student of Suffering, right? We're going to place a sigil. And I'm still getting the buff. There's some bugginess happening here. Obviously, this will get fixed, but it is just something I want to document in my video. So the other option here on the choice node is Flamebound. Immolation Aura has 2-yard increased radius and 30% increased critical strike damage bonus. So this is really good if you intend on playing an Immolation Aura and Ragefire build. So if you start taking Growing Inferno, Burning Wound, Ragefire, you take AFI, this is going to work really well, because what happens with Immolation Aura in general, so let me pose a situation for you. You're in Algathar Academy. You are running to the first boss, the tree boss, and your tank is grouping up all of the trash before the boss, right? You have a pack of 30 mobs. You start popping your Immolation Auras, and because you're over the target cap, each tick of your Immolation Aura is spreading out the total damage across every mob that it's hitting, because you're going past the target cap. Essentially what happens is each tick is doing less damage because it's being spread out. It's doing less damage per tick than it would compared to Immolation Aura ticking on 8 targets or 5 targets or whatever. So what this is helping with is that you're increasing the critical strike damage bonus. So anytime that it actually crits on those mobs, it's getting an increased damage bonus by 30%, meaning each of those ticks is going to be ticking harder and more damage is being fed into your Ragefires. So ultimately, it's just giving you a lot more Ragefire damage. And the capstone talent, Demonic Intensity. Activating Metamorphosis greatly empowers I-Beam, Immolation Aura, and Sigil of Flame. So remember, when something gets empowered, we want to think back to Chaos Strike becoming Annihilation, and Blade Dance becoming Death Sweep. If I-Beam, Immolation Aura, and Sigil of Flame are all getting empowered, those are getting turned into different spells. Effectively, they do the same thing. They have the same effects, they just do a little bit more damage. So what empowering an ability does for Demon Hunters is it generally does around 30% increased damage. When your Chaos Strike turns into Annihilation, it's doing 30% more. And that's the same thing with these 3. Now, the cool thing about getting these new abilities is they have different names and different icons. So I can show them to you if I just go ahead and use meta. So Immolation Aura becomes Consuming Fire, I-Beam becomes Abyssal Gaze, and Sigil of Flame turns into Sigil of Doom. It just feels kind of badass to get these new abilities with new icons. It makes you feel like the class is doing something different. It's cool to see the new icons on the bar. I've heard some criticism of people just browsing and glazing over this talent tree and saying, oh, there isn't much flavor. Man, turning 3 of your abilities into brand new abilities with different icons where the names are changing and it's all based around your demon inside, and like you're being a demon hunter who gets consumed by his demon and just bursts into like demonic energy. If that's not flavor, I don't know what is flavor. Okay, anyways, the second part of this tooltip says Demonsurge damage is increased by 10%. So that part of the tooltip is very misleading, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I just want to go over how the empowered abilities work, because now that they're empowered, those 3 abilities are also capable of proccing Demon Surges. So I want you to think about it this way. When you I-Beam and go into Demonic, that is a Demonic window. When you press Meta and you get put into Demon form, that's your Meta window. So those two function very differently. So the demonic window you get from I-Beam gives you the capability of getting Demon Surges on your Annihilation and your Blade Dance. Death Sweep. When you meta and you go into your meta window, that gives you Demon Surges on your Annihilation, your Death Sweep, your Sigil of Flame, Immolation Aura, and your I-Beam. So you're getting 5 Demon Surges from that. Essentially, what you would do is you would I-Beam, spend these 2 Demon Surges, then you could meta. Now you have your Sigil of Flame, you have your Annihilation, Death Sweep, Immolation Aura, I-Beam, all of those things just procced Demon Surges. Now that is not your opener by any means. I just did that to demonstrate how each ability procs Demonsurge. Hey, by the way, if you guys are enjoying this content, if you could do me a huge favor and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers before the War Within launches, and we're super close. I think we're like less than 1,000 subs away. So if you haven't subbed yet, go ahead and sub. It's worth your while, I promise you. There will be a lot more War Within Demon Hunter videos, and if you want to be notified, you just have to click that subscribe button, and maybe hit the bell as well if you want to take the extra step. But really, all you need to do is just subscribe. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Now, something very important to note is when you go into your meta window and you get those 3 abilities empowered, those 3 abilities will stay empowered for as long as you're able to stay in that specific meta window. So if you meta and then you're able to I-beam after that, that technically extends that meta window. I-beaming doesn't put you into a new demonic window after you I-beam because you're already in your meta window. So if you I-beam fresh at the start of a pull, that will put you in your demonic window. But if you meta and then you're I-beaming after that, that's just extending your meta window. Does that make sense? So let me show you this here. I'm going to go ahead and meta, and we're going to get these abilities. So now we have, empowered Immolation Aura, we have our empowered Sigil of Flame, etc. Now I'm going to I-beam. And as long as I can stay in this demon form, I'm going to have those empowered versions of those spells. So you can see the icons are still the new icon. So I just used an empowered Immolation Aura. We're running out here. See if I can stay in. We almost made it, but essentially with more haste and, just proper gameplay in general, you'll be able to stay in that meta demon form and maintain those empowered abilities, which is pretty cool. Now, another thing that is important to note is that when your Immolation Aura gets turned into Consuming Fire, so it becomes empowered, it turns into Consuming Fire, that Consuming Fire ability seems to not be affected by a fire inside. So it can't proc, it can't reset a charge. It seems to be completely separate from Immolation Aura. Now, it does inherit the same cooldown if your Immolation Aura is on cooldown and then you pop meta, but once Violent Transformation is fixed to actually reset the cooldown of Immolation Aura, that won't be a problem. But really all you need to know as of right now is that the Consuming Fire, I have to keep checking these names, Consuming Fire cannot proc a fire inside, and you do not have 2 charges of it. Okay, now remember how I said the second half of this tooltip is a little misleading. Demonsurge damage is increased by 10%. What you'll notice is when I start consuming some of these Demonsurge procs, I get this buff. Damage of your next Demonsurge is increased by 20%. That's because I had 2 stacks of that right there. So every time that you consume or you use a Demonsurge, you get a short buff that makes your next Demonsurge do 10% increased damage. And that stacks up to 5. So if you I-beam, use your Annihilation, which is going to give you 1 stack of the buff, that's going to make your next Demonsurge do 10% increased damage. So when we use a Demonsurge from Death Sweep, that Demonsurge is getting the 10% buff, and then we're getting a new buff, gives us 20%. But from there, we don't have any other Demonsurges to use. So we'd have to meta, which would empower our other abilities, our Immolation Aura, our I-beam, and our Sigil of Flame. Problem is, once you meta, it resets that Demonsurge damage increase buff. So what you would do is you would go I-beam, Annihilation, Death Sweep, so we have the buff, and we're going to meta. That resets that. Now we have 5 Demonsurges to spend, so we're able to get that buff up to 5, and each one that we do is getting increased. The damage is being increased by 10%, stacking up, and then the last one, we don't have anything to spend that on, the stack of 5. But our very last Demonsurge that we used in the whole combo there was amped by 40%, which is pretty significant. Okay, so this is what an opener might look like for a very basic build like this. I'm not taking any movement talents, I'm not taking AFI, I'm not taking Essence Break, no Rage Fire, no Immolation Aura talents, nothing that's really going to be overly intrusive in a rotation. It's going to be very straightforward, kind of like the classic Demon Hunter composition here in terms of talents. This is what the opener would look like. We're going to pre-pull Immo, Sigil of Flame, going to Fellblade for Fury, I-beam, the Hunt, Annihilation, Death Sweep, VR, cancel with meta, Death Sweep, Annihilation, Sigil of Flame, I-beam, Death Sweep, Annihilation, and then Immolation Aura to spend our last Demonsurge. Now, ideally, if the talent was working properly, we'd have that Immolation Aura reset to be able to use right away. We had to use a Death Sweep and an Annihilation without a Demon Surge, so we could have used that Immolation Aura earlier if it was properly reset with the talent, but at the moment it's not. So the way I have it set up like this is because the buff from the very first Sigil that we put on is lasting all the way until the Annihilation after we press meta. So we're getting that extra mastery, increased mastery by 8%, all the way through our first Fellblade, our I-Beam, the Hunt, first Annihilation, Death Sweep, VR Meta, Death Sweep, and Annihilation, and then it falls off. And then we put our Sigil back on to get that buff again. Then we follow it up with another I-Beam and our Immolation Aura and everything else that follows for the next 8 seconds. So what is my general opinion on this? I think this is way better than Eldrazi Reaver. I am so relieved that this is what we got and it wasn't anything more convoluted. The problem with Eldrazi Reaver is it's just too many little cooldown windows to line up with everything else. It's too much. It's too much maintenance. It's too much micromanagement. Some people might like it, but personally, like I said in my last video, I'm just so over it. I don't want to be using 99% of my brain just on my rotation when I'm playing, just enjoying the game rather than feeling like I'm solving math equations every second of an encounter. Now, it definitely does seem like Eldrazi Reaver is a bit more suited for movement for damage things like inertia and momentum. Fel-Scarred, I think you can still play Fel-Scarred with both of those if you want. If we are playing a build like Cycle of Hatred and, Shattered Destiny, it is very important that we don't lose uptime because we need to be spending as many GCDs as we can to reduce the cooldown on I-Beam to stay in demon form. Now, we don't always want to stay in demon form because if we're able to drop out of demon form, that gives us the chance to I-Beam again and go back into demon form, meaning we get new demon surges from our Annihilation and our Death Sweep. If we're staying in demon form the entire fight, that means we're not getting any extra demon surges to use. So there is still a little bit of incentive to drop out of demon form once in a while so you get those extra demon surges. And thematically, I just think, Eldrazi Reaver is definitely more movement based, more like tactical almost, whereas Fel-Scarred is a bit more just like brutish, demonic, and just like flashy explosions. I expect to have some really good visuals with this, and I just prefer this way better. It's modifying what we already have. It's not really altering our rotation all that much. The only modification you can say is maybe that, you're weaving in Sigil of Flame a bit more, but that's fine. That's okay. We can take Soul Sigils. We can take Flames of Fury. Sigil of Flame is going to do more damage because we're using it more often. If we're going to be using it, it may as well do some more damage. It's going to generate additional Fury per target hit. It's just, we can modify it to make Sigil of Flame be an excellent and important part of the rotation. It is solving a couple more issues potentially because we're getting maximum health increased by 5%, and we're getting 20% more armor, which is fantastic. That's giving us just a bit more physical damage protection. We have more leech. Overall, I think this is great. I think they did really well on this. I think there is still some uncertainty whether or not, getting pushed into a Cycle of Hatred build is healthy, because there are definitely some downsides to that where, you are punished for downtime on bosses, and missing GCDs is very important. But I think that these other talents here, Enduring Torment and Monster Rising, is meant to soften that blow if you do end up dropping out of demon form, and you are still getting more demon surges when you drop out. So it's not the end of the world if you drop your demon form, if you're not keeping your uptime as much as possible. In a lot of cases, it might actually be better. You're actually getting some extra bonuses when you drop. So I think this is great. I'm excited to see how the Sims pan out for this. So we should see some data on this soon. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Are you stoked on this? Do you like it better than Eldrazi Reaver? Honestly, I think this is great. There's a lot of flavor to it. We're getting new abilities. And yes, it is just a new name and a new icon. Functionally, they do the same thing, but it's cool, man. We get new things. Then you're also just getting this mass AoE damage that's a lot like Inner Demon, but you're getting it on all your other abilities. You're getting extra movement speed. You're getting abilities reset. You're getting something that's a lot like Soul-Scar, but it's from your other abilities. You're getting bonus damage outside of your demon form, so you don't feel like a wet noodle when you don't have I-Beam ready. And we have a failsafe that makes this also very good in single target. So I'm very happy with this. I think there is obviously still some tweaking to do. Like I said in my last video for Eldrazi Reaver, some of the talents aren't hooked up. They're not even working properly. There's a lot of things like that happening here, but overall, the general feel, incredible. I like this, and I'm looking forward to Havoc in War Within. Let me know what you guys think down below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'll catch you next time.